This is Andi Purewal for ID Boxing. I'm joined by legendary boxing promoter Bob Arum over Zoom. Bob, how are you?
Good, terrific, terrific. Good morning. It's just afternoon here, uh, but it's a little cold, but otherwise the sun's out, so that's good.
Look, I saw that, Bob. It was snowing the other day. I'm not used to knowing snow in
Well,
Las
I was
Vegas.
in LA, so I missed the snow. I came in the last night to Vegas.
Oh, well, it seems like you stroke lucky there. And Bob, just to kind of kick off this interview, let's go back to your most recent show, which saw Emanuel Navarrete stop Liam Wilson in what was a hugely entertaining fight. Can you just reflect on what you saw on the night there?
Well, we knew that the Aussie was a tough guy and a really good, he was not to be pushed around. Navarrete is so unorthodox. He does everything wrong except win. And it was really exciting. Oscar Valdez sat next to me at the fight. And when Navarrete got knocked down, uh, Oscar got up and started yelling, "Get up, get up, get up." I mean, it was interesting.
Obviously, one of the talking points from that fight, Bob, was when Navarrete got knocked down. People were talking about the 27 seconds or so that he had to recover. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, he got up and it clear within 10. Secondly, he was fouled when he was down. Clearly, Wilson hit him. And when the mouthpiece came out, you saw the referee didn't make the mouth, he put it right back in to Navarrete's mouth. So I didn't see anything wrong with that. I don't know, 24 seconds or so forth, but it's not that unusual uh, for from the time a guy gets knocked down until the fight resumes. It's in the 20s, the second. So I didn't see anything unusual happen.
So, obviously, just for anybody who over social media has potentially called for a rematch, are you putting pay to that? Are you saying there's no chance we see that happening whatsoever?
No, no, we like this Wilson because he puts up a good fight, has a good fight. But Valdez and fight for it, uh, he got out. Oscar got hurt, but now Navarrete and Valdez, and then if uh, Wilson is available, to have the winner fight Wilson. That would be a good solution to everything.
Bob, just moving forwards then and looking at what's next for yourselves. Obviously, you got Ramirez and Commey on the horizon. Obviously, Jose Ramirez was looking at the potential Regis Prograis fight, which never materialized. So, what are you hoping from that fight from Jose and his plans moving forwards?
Well, Jose has to get the rust off because he's been inactive for quite some time. He got married and took some time off, and he's got a good business going in the Central Valley, uh, which you know, he's really developing. He's a very, very smart young man, and uh, I think that we would certainly look to do a Prograis fight for Ramirez if he comes through against Commey. That would be a very good fight. Uh, and Ramirez against any of the 140-pound champions uh, would be a big attraction.
Obviously, Bob, that 140 division is stacked there with so many terrific fighters. You obviously work with a lot of those in Josh Taylor, Teofimo Lopez, obviously Jose, as we mentioned. Um, what do you think's the most likely route for Jose to try to secure himself a crack at another world title?
I think, let him get through Commey, which is not an easy out. Commey is a tough guy. He beats Commey, and then we'll see who's available and who we can match Ramirez up with, because there are a lot of good names in the 140-pound division, but nobody is a draw like Jose Ramirez. It's plain. Jose Ramirez, does gates, which for U.S. standards are very robust, and we'll have to see. But again, to make plans before he fights Commey, who can upset the apple cart, is not wise. It's just a waste of time.
Bob, just looking at kind of a division beneath that, you've got Shakur Stevenson returning. Shakur's seen as one of the best talents in the sport. Yoshino, the man who's coming back against, what challenges does he pose for Shakur in his first fight up at 135?
The Japanese boy is a tremendous puncher. He's undefeated. Kiri Honda, who we work with in Japan, thinks that he's extraordinarily talented. You know what we think about Shakur, that he is on the pound for pound list as one of the great fighters today. So if Shakur beats the Japanese, and it's going to be a tough fight, then our plan would be to match Shakur against the winner of Haney Lomachenko.
Just got
another massive fight.
We'll come on to that shortly, but just sticking with Shakur, a lot of people do believe that between that 130 to 140 bracket, he's arguably the best out of anybody amongst those divisions. With that in mind, Bob, when you're looking at the future, you're looking at, as you said, potential Haney Loma fight. Would you be happy to just put him straight in there? There's no doubting his abilities, no doubting he could very well win against either Haney or Loma. But is that 100% your ideal plan?
Yeah, the plan is for him to fight the Haney Loma winner. I mean, if Haney wins, he's talking about going to 140, so that makes a vacant title for Shakur. But if Loma wins, then Loma and Shakur is a fight that I would pay all kinds of money to watch. I mean, that's really an unbelievable fight. Two real great students and artists in the game of boxing.
You're not the only one who would pay a lot of money to watch that one, Bob. And on Haney Loma, what is the latest that you can update us on? Where do things stand with that fight?
Well, the date is going to be May 20. The question is where we put it. And we'll decide that by the end of the week and hopefully have an announcement next week. Well, that fight is on. It's going to happen. And the question is what the venue is going to be.
I'm curious, Bob, just contractually, where do things stand with Devin? Obviously, he had the 2 fights against George Kambosos working with yourself, and he goes in to fight Loma. Beyond Loma, is there a further deal in place with him, or is it very much you're going to make an offer of Shakur or any other fighters you feel he could benefit from fighting from, but it's also an open field for other promoters to re-enter a negotiation period with him?
I'm not sure about how the contract reads. So I really can't talk about that. But, we hope that if Haney win or lose, I mean, Haney's a terrific fighter, and that we can continue to give him maximum exposure on the ESPN platform.
Moving forwards once again, and just going to next week, Bob, you see Jake Paul and Tommy Fury fight. That's on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Just with your years working within the sport, it's a crossover of two different worlds. How do you expect to see that sell over in America?
Well, most of the people watching it in America will probably be of an age to be my grandkids. By that I mean Jake Paul has a tremendous following on social media, and they, based on his prior fights, they turn out and they're willing to pay money to watch him. So, I mean, for me, it's all good because it's a boxing match and they're bringing eyeballs to boxing that we might not ordinarily have. So, again, don't ask me to make any predictions on how it's going to do because, it's not the audience that we've been exposed to. But based on what information we have, we think it'll do a tremendous number in the United States, even though the start time is a bit early because the fight is on prime time in Saudi Arabia, where the fight's being held, and also prime time, pretty much prime time in London. And I think it'll do really well in London because of Jake Paul and also because of Tommy Fury.
Bob, I might not be able to ask you for a prediction on numbers front, but can I get your thoughts on the fight itself? Because a lot of people within the industry actually feel that Jake might come out on top. And I know you've got certain allegiances to the Fury family because of your work with Tyson, but who do you think will win that one?
I have absolutely no idea. I have absolutely no idea. That is really true. I mean, I cannot, for the life of me, predict the winner of that fight. I really can't, because you can argue a lot of ways. I mean, Jake Paul has looked pretty good, but he's never been in with a fighter, with a boxer. He's been in with these MMA guys and so forth, celebrities. And Tommy has, all of his fights have been against boxers. So again, what does that all mean? I have absolutely no idea. I have absolutely no idea. There's no result for that fight that would surprise
me. Bob, just sticking with the Fury name, Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk, the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. Now it came out a few days ago that it doesn't seem like it will take place in Saudi Arabia, and from what the reports were reading, it's due to the arena not being able to build within a certain time frame for when you want the fight to happen. Is that the case?
Well, the date is pretty well set. It's the last Saturday in April. I forget whether it's 28th or 29th, but the last Saturday in April. And we're looking to put the fight at Wembley Stadium. And we're getting close with the negotiations with both Usyk and his promoter, K2, and with Tyson. So hopefully we can get busy on that fight as early as next week and get the thing, going so we can, I would like very much to do a press conference, not only in London, but to bring the fighters over to New York and do a press conference in New York as well, because the fight will do really good business on pay-per-view in the United States, even though the start time will be a bit early. But for the East, it's about 6, 7 at night. So, I mean, it's a big fight. People want to watch that fight.
Financially, Bob, when you was negotiating with the Saudis, it was talked about how each fighter has to negotiate their own purse with them, whereas over in the UK, it's one pot and they have to agree on how it will be split. How much of a loss, if at all, will either fighter be looking at because it's going to take place, or it seems at the minute most likely it will take place in the UK?
Well, again, the money, if the fight were to be held in Saudi Arabia, which is not going to be because they're not anxious to do that fight in the time period required. Forget, you got to put that aside because that money was really very big compared to what is realistic. The money from the real money from the fight, which will be the UK gate, the pay-per-view, the American pay-per-view, and the other revenue from foreign sales will be very, very big as a fight, you know what I mean? But it pales by comparison to the Saudi money. But the Saudi money is not realistic because Saudi Arabia is not available to do that fight in the time period that is required by the organizations.
We saw, as you mentioned earlier, how close things might be in dealing with K2 and Alex Krassyuk, Oleksandr Usyk's promoter. He's actually over here in the UK now, speaking with the Warrens, trying to get that deal over the line. He's been adamant it has to be a 50-50 split. Do you agree with that?
No, I like Alexander. He's a nice guy, and he's Ukrainian. So again, I love Ukraine. I love Ukrainian, but he should shut up and not negotiate in the press. I will not negotiate this fight in the press even a little. The negotiations have to be behind the scenes. The Usyk people, because I know his manager, Igis Klimas, we have a lot of fighters that he manages that we promote. Terrific guy, very sensible. We can come to an understanding with him and Tyson. So I am not going to talk about percentages or statements because once you start negotiating in the press, it all falls apart because then the ego of people come to the fore, and that trumps common sense. So let it be, let it be behind the scenes. I'm sure we'll put it together and hopefully have an announcement shortly.
I'm going to be cheeky, Bob, and I imagine you're going to shut it down quickly. How far off would you say that Alex's hopes were for Alexander's split were from what your own opinion was?
He was negotiating in the press. I am not going to negotiate in the press. I am very optimistic because of who we're dealing with and the kind of caliber of people they are that will be able to put this fight to bed.
That's fair enough, Bob. But moving forward and speaking to Eddie Hearn today, who happens just to be all of 10 meters away from me now, he spoke about the potential for Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua fight if the Usyk fight cannot be secured. Is there any thoughts on that? Is there an openness if for whatever reason Fury-Usyk falls through to make Fury Joshua in the summer?
Fury-Usyk is not going to fall through, number one. Number two, I thought Joshua is scheduled to fight in April against some guy named Franklin. Yeah. All right. So again, if for some reason Usyk retired from boxing, let's say, and Fury was left without an opponent, then he would fight some Brit. Some other Brit, or maybe some European fighter, but he will fight the end of April. Down the line, if Fury is successful, and the best fight for him would be Anthony Joshua, and they don't mess around like they did last time, I would certainly like to put that fight together, provided Joshua wins his fight in April. But again, we can't have uh, anybody messing around. Uh, you know, that fight we were talking about uh, before Tyson fought Chisora, that we had the percentages and everything, and then Joshua pulled out. Well, okay, there may have been reasons for that, et cetera, but a straightforward negotiation, if the time is right for that, is what we're looking for to get that fight over the line. There's no reason why that fight couldn't happen, but Fury has to beat Usyk first, and Joshua has to beat the guy he's fighting.
You mentioned that you would look at potential British opponents then for Tyson if again, for whatever reason, the Usyk fight doesn't happen. The other name linked was Joe Joyce, but he's due to fight Zhilei Zhang a couple of weeks before. So where would that leave things for you guys?
We got to see how Dubois is. That's a possibility. I don't even want to talk about other possibilities because I'm so optimistic that Fury and Usyk will happen and will happen the last Saturday in April. So to bring other people's names into it and so forth really is unfair because I am absolutely confident that we'll conclude the negotiations satisfactorily with the Usyk people and with Tyson.
Bobby may well just be me being a pessimistic, just because of how we've seen the boxing world unfold previously. But we'll move on from Fury Joshua and onto another note. We saw the WBO officially order Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez earlier today. Bob, it came out that it was being negotiated earlier this week and back end of last week. So, was you expecting the order to come through?
No, I mean, it was up to the WBO. But you know, Teofimo Lopez has been a loyal fighter for the WBO. He was the lightweight champion. He's always respected the WBO. He's the number one contender. So it was normal, likely, that the WBO would order the mandatory fight. And it's a huge fight. I know that I talked with Teofimo and we've talked with Josh. Both guys want that fight. And so I'm very pumped that that fight is going to happen. And I mean, I really think it's a fight of the year candidate.
Where do things currently stand with it, Bob? It seems to be that from again reports, it's very close to being agreed.
Yeah, it is very close to being agreed, and the site is up in the air. I think there's a possibility it goes to New York or Las Vegas or maybe even the UK. So we'll have to sort that out. But we promote both fighters and we know what they're thinking and hope that we'll be able to land it in the place that makes most sense for the fight.
Obviously, Bob, over here in the UK, we was all gearing up for the Jack Catterall rematch up until Josh had to pull out, unfortunately, with an injury. Why, or was it just kind of completely dismissed once Teofimo's name came into the equation that we wouldn't see a Taylor Catterall 2? Have you guys as a team now just moved on from Jack Catterall?
You couldn't do it for the title. Once the WBO ruled that Josh had to fight Teofimo, couldn't do a title fight. So the fact that you couldn't do a title fight, Josh Taylor and Catterall, meant that the value of the fight had diminished. So Jack should take another fight, and I'm sure the winner of Taylor and Teofimo would be happy to agree to fight Catterall next. You know, I mean, that seems like the logical thing to do. I know Catterall wants to fight for the title. So, uh, I mean, that's what I would propose to him. They do another fight with his promoter, Boxer. And we would agree, Taylor and Teofimo, that the winner of that fight would fight Catterall.
There have been some reports coming out that Jack's trying to uh, secure a fight with Regis Prograis. Say if that was to be done, say if Jack came out on top, that is a great fight in itself. How much more value do you think that would add to a potential rematch with Josh if Josh was to beat Teofimo as well?
Well, that would be terrific if Catterall could beat Prograis. Then his value is greatly enhanced. Whether he fights Josh Taylor or Teofimo, whoever wins that fight, now he brings a belt, a title of his own, and so that certainly enhances that fight.
Just a couple more from me, Bob. Artur Beterbiev. We saw him over here in the UK most recently in January, and now there's talks about what's next. And Callum Smith is in that number one position. What can you tell us about that? Have you started talks at all about that fight?
Well, I'm not going to talk to anybody about the Callum Smith fight with Beterbiev because Callum Smith has a fight in March, as I understand. So why go through with the whole machinations of talking about a fighter fighting Beterbiev for the title when we don't know how the Callum Smith fight in March turns out? Now, he may win, he may lose, but he may get hurt, he may get cut. But if he comes through, he is certainly the mandatory, and that will be the first course of action, particularly if we can't make a fight against Bivol, who may be sitting around waiting for a Canelo fight, which pays him a lot more. So we'll have to see. But definitely, Callum Smith is on our radar, and we'll be closely monitoring his fight in March. Because he's a good fighter and he would be competitive with Beterbiev, who I think, in my opinion, is the best light heavyweight.
Where would you see a Callum Smith and Beterbiev fight landing? Would that be back over in the UK or over in your neck of woods in America or
Well, it
elsewhere?
depends. I want to see whether, or it could be Canada, or it could be Canada. I mean, Beterbiev is in effect a Canadian because he's lived in Montreal for 12 years, and he's enormously popular, particularly in French Canada. So that's a possibility. You know, the UK is a possibility. Beterbiev had no problem going to London to fight Anthony Yarde. And I think, I think it was a big, big success. People watched him. I mean, he's such a gentleman. And even though he looks like a guy you don't want to tangle with, he's a soft-spoken, very intelligent guy. And he was, I think, very appealing to the English fans. So again, let's see what happens with the Callum Smith fight in March. Hopefully he comes through with flying colors. And then I'll sit with Matchroom and we'll work something out. Because, I mean, there's a will, there's a way. And we'll be able to, I'm pretty sure, put something together.
And the final one from me, Bob. We saw Luis Alberto Lopez defeat Josh Warrington over here in the UK back in December, and there was a lot of talk after that that he might face Michael Conlan. Is that progressing? Is that still the case?
I think we're working on the Conlan fight with Lopez. I'm very optimistic that it'll happen, but I'm not sure about the date and so forth. But Mick really deserves a shot at the title. We're very fond of Mick. Lopez is also fond of Lopez. So I think that fight can happen, and hopefully it'll happen in the first 6 months of this year.
Right, Bob, I've taken enough of your time for what's this evening for me and early afternoon for yourself. So I'll leave you to enjoy what you've got coming up and plan for the rest of your day. Thank you for speaking to me.
Andy, pleasure to talk to you.